Hey PT on Ice listeners, this is Katie from Jane. We're so honored to be a part of your listening experience today. Here at Jane, we're on a mission to help helpers just like you grow and manage your business. With Jane, we also know that every practitioner is unique. For that very reason, you can build your own charting templates, adjust your online booking settings, and view your schedule the way you want, all to match the way that you work. Head on over to jane.app/physical therapy to learn more about us, or use the promo code ICEPT1MO for a 1-month grace period if you know you're ready to get started. We'll talk to you later.
All right, we're live on YouTube, going live on Instagram here. All right, good morning, folks. Welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show, brought to you by the Institute of Clinical Excellence. My name is Dustin Jones, one of the lead faculty within the Older Adult Division. Today's Wednesday. That means we're talking about all things older adults. The question that we're going to try and tackle today: does strength fix balance? Does strength fix balance? We're live on Instagram and YouTube. We're grateful for the podcast listeners as well. It's going to be a good one, y'all. Before we get into it, I want to discuss a couple things coming up in the world of MMOA, modern management of the older adult. Our next online cohort is starting on March 2nd. So we sold out this previous cohort in January. We're about 3 weeks in. Solid group of individuals. If you're wanting to get into that next cohort, I would do that sooner than later. We're already seeing folks sign up for that. You can go to ptonice.com to get more info there. In terms of our live course, we've had a solid January so far. Next courses that are available to the public, we're going to be in Des Moines, Iowa. Super pumped about that, the 12th of February. And then on March the 5th, we're going to be in Atlanta, Georgia, myself and Julie Brower. So if anyone's around that Atlanta area, we'd love to see y'all. Pretty excited about that. So lots of stuff going on in the MMOA world, but we want to discuss, does strength fix balance? This is a question, kind of a side conversation I had this past weekend at MMOA Live in Paoli, Pennsylvania. A solid group with Alex Germano. Natalie Kraut was there, Ellen Seppi as well. Awesome group of individuals, but I had a really good conversation with the student talking about getting people stronger, and does that clean up a lot of balance deficits, right? If I just put a weight in someone's hand, that's probably going to improve their Berg, right? Or their mini best, or whatever, insert whatever balance related measure. And it got me thinking, because the answer is yes. And the answer is also no. A good old, it depends, right? We love that kind of answer. But let's kind of dive into this, because when you dive into the literature, there are several studies that will perform just strength training activities alone with a particular older adult cohort. Not necessarily too specific in terms of different conditions, medical conditions, or different pathologies, more of kind of a general older adult population, typically in a particular setting, like assisted living facility, or someone that is in a skilled nursing facility, for example, is typically organized by what type of care they're receiving. And you're going to see support that says, hey, we just gave people strength-based activities. We focused on strength, and all of these different balance outcome measures improved as well. So you could say strength training can improve balance. Now, I want you to think about the why. Why did strength improve balance for that particular individual? Because we can make a really good argument, right? If I improve my ability to produce force in a situation where I may lose my balance, right? If I'm having to perform some type of balance strategy, where it's a hip strategy, ankle strategy, a stepping strategy, if I'm stronger in those particular strategies, it's probably going to improve my capacity to maintain my center of mass over my base of support, if we're talking about balance, right? That is true. That's very, very true. So we don't want to ignore that. But what if the strength training activities that I'm performing may not necessarily be benefiting my muscle force production as much as training some of those strategies, right? I think many of you all may feel this when you're doing a deadlift with some of your patients. You go to do that deadlift, you initiate that hip hinge, and what do you start to notice pretty quickly? especially if you're working with someone that's has a fear of falling or has not really performed this movement before. As soon as they start to hinge forward, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of shifting, there's a lot of course correction, if you will, that even though you may not even have weight and you're just doing that hip hinge, you're really training a hip strategy. You are performing a movement that is causing some internal perturbations that they're having to perform that strategy to maintain their balance. And so, a lot of, especially standing based, what we would typically consider strength based activities, we would typically consider them to be strength, but in reality, we may actually be performing internal based perturbations where they're having to practice these balance strategies. So we may be getting them stronger, but we also may be really training and challenging their balance strategies and the efficiency and the quickness and their ability to perform those, right? Not necessarily just the force production side of things. So I think that's a really important question to ask. How does the strength exercise, how is it actually influencing that person? Is it a force production benefit and that's why their balance is improving? Or is it the fact that we may actually be doing balance training disguised by a strength exercise? Deadlift is one example. A squat is another one. Loaded carry. A lot of these kind of functional based activities that we would typically put in the strength bucket may actually, the benefit may be from the balance side of things. So that's strength can help, right? And when you want to think about that question, but where strength will not help is in this, dozens of other areas where balance can typically break down, because balance is really complex, right? We have these systems that give us that information, and we have to process and synthesize that information. Then we have to execute a particular task to maintain our center of more mass over our base of support. It's much, much more than just my ability to create force and produce force with my muscles, right? Think about the scenarios in kind of a dual task situation, right? If someone is trying to perform a motor dual task or a cognitive dual task for a particular activity, and then when balance breaks down, is strength training going to really affect that? You know, I don't think so. I don't think so. Many of you all would likely agree with that. That's where we may have to do dual task based training to make a little things more complex so they're more adaptable in the real world to maintain their balance when they are out in the community or whatever setting, whatever they're trying to do, right? Think about the individual with the vestibular dysfunction where they're really struggling with changes of position with head movements. They're ambulating and they're not really taking in what's around them. They're kind of locked in terms of their head position, not taking a lot of sensory information. Their world kind of shrinks down and becomes smaller. Me doing strength-based activities and just getting someone stronger, is that really going to influence that person in a dramatic way? Probably not, right? Yeah, we could do some strength-based activities that's going to get some vestibular input. Deadlift is a great example. But is that going to influence their balance in a dramatic manner? Probably not, right? Think about reaction timing. When someone has to respond to a particular stimulus in a very quick manner, whether it's a hip strategy, ankle strategy, stepping strategy, is strength alone going to make that reaction timing improve? To some extent, right? Especially if it's more kind of power preference where we're producing force quickly, that can definitely help some. But if we're not actually challenging their reaction in several different scenarios, strength alone may not necessarily get the job done. So balance is very, very complex. And when people need to maintain their balance, it's typically in pretty complex situations. Typically, they're doing some type of motor dual task, some type of cognitive dual task. There's some type of visual distraction, some type of unique vestibular input. They're very complex scenarios. And if we expect to perform relatively simple exercises to prepare someone for a complex situation, we may be setting someone up for failure. So we need to think about, where does their balance break down? What deficits do they actually have? What do we see in our actual assessment? And oftentimes, it's not just going to be weakness, right? It's not just going to be their limited ability to create force with their muscles, all right? It's going to be complex. You're going to see deficits in several different areas. And so that's why strength training alone probably ain't going to get the job done. We need to have a more balanced approach, a more balanced program that's going to address their specific deficits related to balance. And so what it may look like is a lot of motor dual tasking, a lot of cognitive challenge on top of some activities that you're doing, of doing a lot of dynamic based activities in different postures, different stances, layering on the dual task component, maybe adding a vestibular input with head turns, manipulating their visual input as well, making these complex situations, simulating that in your session so they're more adaptable out in the real world. Now, here's the tough part though, right? When you're working with older adults and you go through your assessment, you're probably going to see some of these unique deficits related to balance, right? Not always, but a lot of times you are going to see that. But you're also going to see a lot of weakness. You're also going to see folks that have a really tough time producing force. They're one rep max living, many of these individuals, where their max effort is right around or less than some things that they have to do in their real life. So what often happens? Your programs have a ton of strength training, but then some of that tailored balance training as well. So I'm not saying we're not going to be doing strength training, right? Because that's probably going to be the case 9 times out of 10 with a lot of folks that we're working. But if we're trying to use strength training to get people stronger and improve balance, we may want to think a little bit differently about our strength training activities and kind of widen our scope. Let's get people stronger, but then also let's challenge their balance in the unique manners or based on the deficits that we're able to see. So strength alone, it can improve balance to some extent, but it may be doing it in different mechanisms than what we perceive. We may actually be doing balance training in the guise of a strength-based exercise. The deadlift is a good example. A lot of hip strategy training in a deadlift versus just getting muscles stronger, right? So we want to think about that. We also want to be very thorough with our assessment. So we identify where does balance break down with these particular individuals. If you are able to find that, which there's several measures that we've talked about on this podcast, Mini Best is a great one for y'all, especially in the outpatient setting. That's going to really guide you to show, oh my gosh, when this person has to do a motor dual task or a cognitive dual task or both, or there's a vestibular input, or their vision is blocked or impaired in some way, shape, or form, their balance crumbles. Well, that's where you probably want to train people up, but then also get them stronger, because so many folks do present with weakness, with difficulty producing force. So that's how we think about strength training and balance training. I would love your all's thoughts here. I think it's all based on the assessment. What are we finding? Where does balance break down with these individuals? And then we tailor our programs towards that. And 9 times out of 10, it is going to be an individualized, tailored balance regimen addressing their deficits, but also a lot of general strength training for a lot of individuals. So I'd love your thoughts. Let me know, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on YouTube. Podcast listeners, hop on social media. We'd love to engage with you all. You all have a lovely Wednesday. It's 8:15 right now at the time of this recording. In about 15 minutes, the CEO of ICE, Jeff Moore, is about to send out the Hump Day Hustle email. So I'll be looking forward to that with a lot of helpful information. Typically, it's about 5 super helpful links related to your practice. There may be something in there about balance training and strength training in there. So be sure to get that if you're not on that, ptonice.com, and then you can go to the Hump Day Hustle tab. All right, y'all have a lovely Wednesday. I will talk to y'all soon. Hope to see y'all out on the road or in MMA Essential Foundation starting March 2nd. Y'all have a lovely day.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.